Well, we are going to start our simple and practical English lesson, which is very useful for you for your IELTS exam. Especially this lesson will be very useful for IELTS beginners. Today we are going to discuss about the use of in spite of, despite, even though, although and though. Actually, all these words are same. Then what's the difference? All of these have the same meaning. They all show contrast. Now look at this example. First of all, we'll consider what is contrast. What is contrast? Contrast is something opposite. Black and white. We can say black and white. When we say those two colors, you can just observe the meaning of the word contrast. When we say sick and healthy, that is contrast. That is opposite in meaning. When we say small and big, you can see the meaning of contrast. Big and small. Well, now we are going to discuss the use of in spite of. You have to use in spite of with noun or gerund. Now look at this example. In spite of the rain, we played the final match. Rain and played the final match. There is a contrast there. Usually, when it is raining, we don't go out. But here in this example, in spite of the rain, we played the final match. We didn't care the rain. So there is a contrast. When there is a contrast, you can use the use in spite of. In spite of and the noun. Here in this sentence, the rain is the noun. You can use a noun or a gerund just after in spite of. What is a gerund? Gerund is the verb with ing. Now look at this example. Here, in spite of the rain, I went jogging. In spite of the rain. When there is a heavy rain, you usually don't go out. But here in this sentence, in spite of the rain, I went jogging. Normally we don't do so. So we can say there is a contrast. That is not a normal behavior. In spite of the rain, I went jogging. And you can say this way as well. I went jogging in spite of the rain. You can use in spite of in the middle of the sentence. I went jogging in spite of the rain. Now look at this. Here, rain and played. This shows contrast. We didn't care about the rain. We still played the match. Therefore, we can say, in spite of the rain, we played the final match. Now look at this example. In spite of being underage. In spite of being underage, Radha went to a liquor shop. Underage, liquor shop. They don't fit. They don't match. Underage and liquor shop. It shows contrast. So we can say, in spite of being underage, Radha went to a liquor shop. Here, the word been is called the gerund. What is a gerund? Gerund is a verb with ing in spite of being underage. Radha went to a liquor shop. In all these examples, A happens, B doesn't matter. We played our final match. B doesn't matter. It was raining. But it doesn't matter. We played the match. In spite of the rain, we played the final match. In spite of and despite, both the same. Now here, look at this sentence. I went to work in spite of my fever. Normally, when you have fever, you don't go to work. But in this sentence, we have said, I went to work in spite of my illness. I have fever, but I still want to go to work. I went to work. That is in the past tense. I went to work in spite of my fever. Look at this example. In spite of bad traffic, I could come on time. Bad traffic, on time. It shows contrast. There is a contrast there. They don't match. Normally, you can't get there on time when there is bad traffic. But here in this sentence, in spite of bad traffic, I could come on time. In spite of and despite, both the same. You can replace in spite of with despite. Both the same. Despite the rain, we played the final match. In spite of the rain, we played the final match. But when you use the word despite, never use the preposition of. Despite of is wrong. Never use it. Despite of is wrong. In spite of. Now here we have said, despite the rain, we played the final match. Now look at this example. Despite the rain, I went jogging. I went jogging despite the rain. You can say, I went jogging despite the rain. The word despite, we can put in the middle of the sentence as well. Now look at this example. Despite being underage, Radha went to a liquor shop. Radha went to a liquor shop despite being underage. Underage, liquor shop. It shows contrast. They don't match. Underage and liquor shop. But here we have said, despite being underage, Radha went to a liquor shop. Despite plus noun or gerund. This is the way of construction. Despite plus noun, we can say despite the rain. Or despite plus gerund. Gerund is the verb with ing. Despite being underage. Being is the gerund. Gerund means verb with ing. Despite being underage, Radha went to a liquor shop. Right. Well, despite the bad traffic, I could come on time. In spite of the bad traffic, I could come on time. They are both the same. Now, look at this example. Especially keep in your mind, you must keep in your mind, we do not use despite with of. Despite of is wrong. Despite of, never use. We never use despite of. Despite the bad traffic, I could come on time. Next example. Despite of is wrong. Right. Now here, there is another way of construction. In spite of the fact that and a clause. Despite the fact that and a clause. Despite the fact that and a clause. What is a clause? A clause is the subject and the verb. A clause means subject and the verb. Right. I'll give you an example. I still love muffin despite the fact that I am 38. You can say despite the fact that and a complete sentence. I still love muffin despite the fact that I am 38. He can work hard despite the fact that he is 75. He is 75. But he can work hard. Then we can say he can work hard despite the fact that he is 75. Now look at this example. Now we are going to discuss the use of although and even though. What's the difference between although and even though? Even though is stronger than although. Let's look at this sentence. Although Sri Lanka is very famous for tea, many people love coffee. Although Sri Lanka is very famous for tea, many people love coffee. You prefer tea or coffee? I prefer coffee. I love coffee. But Sri Lanka is very famous for tea. Now we can say, although Sri Lanka is very famous for tea, many people love coffee. Right. Well, now what's the difference between although and even though? Normally we can say they are both the same. They are both the same. But even though is stronger. I'll give you some examples. Right. Now look at this example. Even though I bought a new motorbike. I bought a new motorbike. Even though I can't afford it. What is the meaning of can't afford? Can't afford means I don't have enough money. I don't have enough money, can't afford. But I could manage to buy it. I bought a new motorbike. So we can say I bought a new motorbike even though I can't afford it. So even though shows us stronger contrast. Contrast is stronger when we use the word even though. Now look at this example. Normally even though and although both the same. Now look at this example. Even though you don't have qualifications, you can get this job. Can you get a job if you don't have qualifications? It's very difficult. Sometimes we can get a job. We can manage to get a job. But it's very difficult to find a job if you don't have qualifications. But here in this case, we have said, even though you don't have qualifications, you can get this job. It shows contrast. All these words are same. Now today we are discussing the uses of in spite of, despite, though, although and even though. All the same. The only difference is the way of construction. Right, next example. Even though you don't have qualifications, you can get this job. We already discussed that example. Can you believe it? Without qualifications, getting a job? No, it's very difficult. Even though I didn't like the proposal, I said yes. I didn't like the proposal, but I said yes. Even though I didn't like the proposal, it is much stronger. Even though I didn't like the proposal, I said yes. Now we have given this example by using although. Although the sun is shining, it isn't that hot. It shows contrast. The sun is shining, not hot. Sun is shining, but it is not hot. There is something opposite there. It shows contrast. So we can say, although the sun is shining, it isn't that hot. Now look at this example. Now we are going to consider the word though. This word is used at the end of a sentence. It's something different. We can use it at the end of a sentence. I had a good time at the restaurant. I had a good time at the restaurant. I didn't enjoy the food though. I didn't enjoy the food. We can say, I didn't enjoy the food though. Now these are two different sentences. Next example here. I played video games last night. I played video games last night even though my mother told me not to. Here in this sentence, you can use any of these words, even though, although, though. I played video games last night, although my mother told me not to. Or else you can say, I played video games last night, though my mother told me not to. All three answers are correct. Now, look at this example. Though he studied well, he failed the exam. We can use the word though at the beginning of a sentence. Though he studied well, he failed the exam. And we can use the word though in the middle of the sentence. He failed the exam, though he studied well. And the last sentence is, he studied well, full stop. And it is a separate sentence. He studied well. He failed his exam though. Remember, in the last example, we have given two separate sentences. So we are going to wind up today's discussion. And never forget to subscribe this channel. If you need to join my classes, you can call on 076 760 9005. The number given here on the screen. And try to write a sentence in the comment section below showing contrast. Thanks for watching. Wish you all the best.